Oh shit! Sorry, I had a sort of blank then. Hello and welcome to Just Chopsing Podcast. And today we are with Fabrizio Grossi. He's coming from stateside, and obviously from Wales is my cousin David. And yeah, how's it going, Fab?
Cool, all good. Thanks. How's it going, guys?
Yeah, good
Yeah,
man.
really good. Really good.
So, what did I
Having my
say?
fix of decaf coffee. Cannot do caffeine no more, but
Oh right,
still
okay.
still looks good, right? The cup.
Yeah.
I mean, what time are you there?
It's 11 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, that's not too bad. Flipping heck, I thought it might have been about 6.
Oh no. I've been up since 6, but that's a different story.
All right. So you were born in Milan, in Italy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then you moved to New York in 1990, I read.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
how old were you when you moved to New York, if you don't mind me asking?
21,
Oh, right, okay. So,
roughly. Yeah.
yeah. Did you move there just for work purposes or?
Yeah. Funny enough, even though I was very young, I had a band. I was working with a bunch of different bands in Milan, but we had specifically a band that was signed with Sony, or the Italian equivalent of back then, and they used to send us, to Canada, upstate New York, to play with other bands and get more familiar with the English language. The band disbanded, but right before I left, obviously, like all bands do at some point, and I was already working with a bunch of other artists, a bunch of Italian artists, and all of that. And actually, it was a good time. It was good business. I cannot deny it. But the thing is, like, I always had my passion and what I wanted to do musically wise, and decided that if I was not gonna try it back then, I would definitely not gonna try it when I thought I'm now. So packed everything up, shipped everything over. Actually, originally I was supposed to move to Toronto because that's where we used to set up camp and where I had most of my friends and everything. But I went to Toronto, and for a series of, I don't know, I guess a lucky series of circumstances and consequences, I ended up in New York for a weekend, and one thing led to another, everything like that. I went back to Milan, and after 2 months, I moved back, and I was able to do that in New York.
Oh, right, okay. Oh, yeah, that's pretty interesting then. Sort of how you, I don't know if you say how your luck can change, but just the way things take you.
Well, I think I hope that I'm, changed since then. I think that will, I think everybody some point evolves. Maybe you're still
Yeah.
the same in terms of like some of your values and all of that, but there are a few things that change. Oh no, absolutely. It's the thing is, like, I was able to work with such great artists, and a lot of them, majority when they were idols of mine, and people that kind
Hmm.
of like got me into music in the first place. And that actually helped me a lot to understand, first of all, that I made the right decision.
Hmm.
Sure, on a bunch of other aspects, I would say, especially considering what's happening right now here in the States. I mean, and like from pensions to healthcare to, freaking nut jobs all over the place, and everything else that is going on. Uh, you got to think that maybe with a safety net of a place like, Italy in that sense, because of the family and the way actually the country was structured. But to be honest with you, first, after basically 30 years here in the States, I'm more American than Italian in terms of like age or whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I think it's actually, at the end of the day, I will say, yeah, in spite of all that, I have story to tell, to tell, plenty of stories to tell, and
Yeah.
the experiences, that you acquire is insane. And in one way, the more you move forward, and the more you work with the bigger artist, or in a bigger type of circumstances. At least, I guess it's part of my origin, the way I've been raised, but also the way I take life at this point or anything like that. Instead of it kind of like it keeps you humble. I don't know how to explain it. It's, for me, it's not an opportunity to to start acting like a dick. Actually, it's quite the opposite,
Yeah.
And I noticed that among my colleagues and friends, and especially the one that we will all consider as world stars, the bigger they are, the nicer they are. And it's not only the nicer, it's just like the more real, the less problematic. Then maybe you got other people working with them, or the musicians in the band that are being just at it for the last 4 years, and they think all of a sudden it's like whatever, they're like the little Elton John of the situation, or Prince walks on stage, But for the majority, I would say the attitude of these great musicians and artists that I had a chance to work with helped me to kind of like be aligned with that, and first of all, I'm making a living doing what I like. Why do I have this? Already that shouldn't give me any reason to be mad about anything.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So then in 96, then you relocated to Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And did that open a few more doors for you then with your?
I would say it opened all the doors, because
right, okay.
Don't get me wrong, I love the city, and I mean, I've been raised in Milan, and I spent several summers in London. So, I love Toronto. We lived in Toronto every time that we went there with the band. So I'm kind of like, I'm a big city boy, even though I live in the suburbs here and I like the natures and all of it. But I've been raised with that kind of attitude, and always, like to, the actions, the noise and all that kind of stuff. And New York, I guess, is the world capital for that, by any means. And New York gave me a lot. I really love the attitude of New York. I like the fact that people have no time to waste, and generally you get things done quickly without many bullshit, which is actually the opposite of Los Angeles. But the problem is, for somebody like me, I mean, I had a band, and with the guitar player, we basically turned the house band that we had in Long Island. I used to live in the city, and I do the anti-commute. I would go every morning to Long Island, and every night I would come back. We turned the house band in Long Island into a home recording studio, and we started to record local bands and ourselves too. So that got me really, really heavy interested into productions, right? The thing is, in New York, I still wanted to be, to do something with bass and, as a musician. But the problem is, for the kind of stuff that I like, or the kind of music that I like, or at least I was more into back then, it was, maybe if you were lucky one night in a club, you would meet somebody that knew somebody that had a cousin that was a roommate of a former drummer of a former girlfriend of Tommy Lee. That was the closest connection that you could have had directly with an artist. As soon as I arrived I used to come to Los Angeles almost like every year for NAMM, and from sometimes you drive, to play or whatever it is. And as soon as I arrive in LA and says, okay, that's the place, I moved into the place where I ended up living. The following 2 days afterwards, I funny enough, I already had more friends when I moved to Los Angeles than not when I moved to New York. Because when I moved to New York, I only knew one person that I never met to a friend of mine. Okay. But I came to Los Angeles already, with a bunch of phone numbers. I had a couple of photographers and other producers and some musicians. So kind of like I arrive, I call everybody, hey, I'm here, whatever it is. Oh, come down to this place, because tonight, Marco Mendoza and some other guys are playing. Oh, Marco, shit. So already like the second night there, I'm on the club. I'm catching up with Marco Mendoza, who I met in New York, and he introduced me to these other guys in the band. The keyboard player Renato ended up being a great friend of mine, and he was actually musical director for Prince. The same night, the crowd, it was like Michael Landau. 2 weeks later, I ended up meeting Steve Lukather. I mean, it was like all of a sudden, everything that I didn't do in 5 years, it was happening. So that, I think it's at least for, again, my world, it was incredible. It was an incredible improvement. However, I have to say that there's a saying, is especially abused in the Italian community in the tri-state area in New York. It's just like, you're making your bones. That's the way we say it. It's more like a mob thing. You're making your bones. You're making your story. Well, I guess that the 5-year experience in New York definitely made my bones for a lot of things. Because in New York, I had to deal with a bunch of different things, always music related, but sometimes unnecessarily music related. that are kind of like probably more closer to the stereotype of what Italians like me might have in this country, than not, the glitz and glories of the music business. But hey, I think it all helped because again, more stories to tell, and I guess it helped maintain the same attitude to that from Milan, because Milan, just like New York, is one of those places like, come on, today, are you done? Let's get it over with. And what coming here with that kind of attitude, I guess, he helped a lot, in pushing things. And I guess musicians, and especially when I started to produce artists, seeing that the producer was like like somebody that is not just sitting down on the couch, take it easy, oh, let's talk over it over lunch and that kind of, but more like, okay, what we're doing today, what time? Okay, we're gonna be done at 9 tonight, at 9, somebody else is playing and all that kind of stuff. I think that helped me a lot on that regard.
Okay. Dave?
Yeah. So you sort of like touched on some of the guys that you've worked with, and looking at your bio, you've worked with some really, really big artists then. So like Stevie Vai and people like that, Glenn Hughes. So so is that where you've sort of worked with them, produced with them, and played with them, or been on stage with the guys as well?
Well, it's just a different things. I mean, Glenn has always been, a favorite of mine and a major influence as an artist himself. Actually, I met him as a producer. I produced a live record for him, and actually it was a live DVD that turned out to be like a great live record. And we got along so well that he asked me to work with him on his following record, Soul Mover. And we became friends ever since. Generally, Glenn doesn't do more than one record with the same producer, but not because there is a problem with the producer. It's just actually, I understand the physics behind it. But we ended up in doing two because one was a live record, so it wasn't really, like a record with, idea arrangements and all of that. It was just more like of a sonic challenge, putting something like that together. But we ended up in working together often afterwards on a bunch of different, really unrelated projects, more sometimes like if a feature. We did a record together with Dave Drummond from Disturbed, and of course, the work that I was able to do with them, Chad Smith and Steve Vai, on the release of Remachine, which actually was the 40th anniversary celebration of the release of Machine Head by Deep Purple. Deep Purple Estate put together this venture where he got together a bunch of artists to do every single track on the record. There were Metallica involved, Iron Maiden, Flaming Lips. I mean, out of just like whoa. Then I think the Flappard were involved, and a bunch of other artists. Jimmy Baines, Joe Bonamassa was involved as well. And we did a track with Glenn, and we had this idea of doing a song. And at the same time, we didn't know that the estate there made an arrangement with Chicken Foot, with Sammy Hagar and Michael Anthony Joe, and funny because Chad was supposed to be the drummer. It was ended up being the drummer for both of them. But basically, I got this place in the studio, the studio that back then belonged to Steve Lukather, and we ended up recording a version of Highway Star. So basically, there are two versions of Highway Star in that record. One that is a live version because it was recorded live by Chicken Foot, and the one that we did in studio with Glenn on bass and vocals, Chad Smith on drums, and Steve Vai on guitar, and Lucky Dolly on Hammond. And it's just phenomenal because not only we're able to get a song, one of my favorite songs of when I started when I first got into music in that sense, but also some of my favorite artists. And actually, Steve was the guy that actually gave me my big break, producing the guy and just telling these guys, no, we should do this, do that. You start over there. I mean, it's like a very, very, very surreal. So it's like a major satisfaction of mine. But with Glenn, we're friends today. Sometimes again we do things together, but it's more like always like in the production end and on that kind of vibe with him. With Steve, actually, I started off recording bass for him. And then we became friends, and then ended up in producing him on several different projects. And also, we did some work together, like with another associates of ours. I ended up in producing one of his most recent tour all over Europe with the Evolution Tempo Orchestra. So basically, it was like 56 element orchestra, orchestras with 56 element, traveling around Europe with Steve and his band. And it was fantastic, considering that we were coming from Vladivostok, basically. And actually, we're on the Guinness of records because Steve, we basically set up a Russian tour of Steve from starting from Vladivostok, finishing in St. Petersburg. I mean, playing in some places that even God has forgotten about, and that actually it doesn't exist. There is no other Western artist that did as many shows and in so many locations in Russia as Steve. So that was like a little trip. But the being able to produce such a gigantic thing like that, because that was, trust me, not a headache, but a concern from the moment that you open your eyes to the moment that you close your eyes.
Yeah.
But it was actually an incredible experience. And actually, we produced all the cinematographic takes that were occurring during the shows, and also all the audio. There is, I think, like a live record, and some of these things are part of one of the most recent DVDs that Steve released. So that was just a great experience. And but with Steve, we're like very, very close friends. I kind of like. I always consider him as like my big brother, because the guy is beyond wise, and it's not only wise on the music business, but it kind of like. Sorry, guys, I have to my face. Steve is. I don't know how to explain it. He kind of like took on a very spiritual path, very, very, very young, and it's like almost like a guru level, and that's not any specific things. For example, I'm a SGI practicing Buddhist. I'm a Buddhist. I practice Nichiren Buddhism. Steve basically acts like a Buddhist, but he never really professed his affiliation to any specific brand. He's been kind of like, he took it for granted. For him, it was like natural. So he's got a very, very, very calm, a very focalized view on a lot of things. So it's always a good person to have a conversation with, regardless. Obviously, then when it comes down to music, the guy's, it's beyond excellent. And we're friends, and since obviously his Italian origin, his parents actually are from a town that is like really 30 kilometers from where I grew up, southern of Milan. We're kind of like this connection, because generally in the United States, when you meet Italians, are either from Sicily, from Naples, and all of that. Now all of a sudden you find somebody that is like, grew up like really 30 kilometers from where your parents grew up, and it was just like a little weird, but in a good sense. So we're very, very good friends with the family. Like after Christmas, we always get together. We cook and that kind of stuff, and it's an ongoing thing. That's what I'm saying. I was trying to tell you earlier. You get all these people, and then you start to see the man behind the mask or behind the name, and it's all, for the majority, is actually very rewarding and comforting. But don't get me wrong,
can also be very challenging.
The world is full of pricks too. So I mean, once in a while you get somebody that is like, okay, what did I do wrong? But for the majority, I would say it's been a good ride on that sense. At least for the artist. Then of course, then managements and agents and record companies are coming into the pictures. That's a totally different situation. But no, and again, I just mentioned two of the guys, but it's like numberless of people that kind of like always see. I think for what I do, it's if you do it with an open mind, and it's not only a business decision, is you learn and you get something. You get like a little piece of history in time, or like a little frame of time in the relationship that you have or you develop with these artists, whether it's for a full record, whether it's for a lifetime of friendship like with Vi or Lukather, or just maybe for that particular song. There is something that it's, I mean, it kind of like, it not explodes, but it generates, in that moment that you shake the hand. Hi, or you that you're going to be working together with this person for the next at least a few hours, like a whole day, 2 days, whatever it is, and kind of like automatically, almost like for the majority, like a trust channel gets automatically established. Meaning, like if you hear I'm here, we're here for the same reason. Kind of like, okay, we're kind of like the adults in the room.
Yeah.
But it's also with a very young and independent artist, you learn a lot, because they might have a different take on what they're doing that you would have taught to implement. But again, you learn a lot of things, and not only music, but musically related to the personality of the artist. Like for example, with George Clinton or or with Leslie West, or with Slash too. I mean, of all the people, for example, I'm just giving you a vibe, like somebody like Slash, that okay, it's like a big time rock star. He was already a rock star when I wasn't even, I was still living in Italy, and I was playing with my side bands and all that kind of stuff. So these guys got like I don't know, 30 years and something of experience ahead of me, but not in terms of rocks, in terms of like being professional musicians and all of that. The rock star doesn't have nothing to do, but he's a very famous guy, established guy, and all of that. And he's got a sound, and what Guns N' Roses do, and what he does in playing. And you would think that somebody like more, I don't know, like Joe Satriani or Steve Vai would be more like of a perfectionist and super practicing musicians and all of that. Well, not that they are not, because they are. But Slash, the thing that is amazing is like I don't deal often with the guy, but we ended up in working like almost like every 2 or 3 years apart. And every time that I'm in the studio with them, he's better than the previous time. But not better because before there was any problem. It was already great in terms of like he's able to kind of like develop an even bigger vocabulary of his own style. He's got this trip of trying to get, not trying, but he likes sometimes, these things with the guitar, when the guitar, like in blues, rock and blues, hits those bands that reminded him of an ARP sometime. And especially in a work that we did with Leslie West, there was some parts of his guitar solo that sounds like an harmonica through an amp, and like that takes dedication. Somebody like him, I know what he meant. I work with a lot of guys like that, and I know how full is their day. It's not only like, okay, I'm laying around in bed, I'm going, to the Rainbow Bar tonight, we're having fun, I have a couple of chicks coming over, then what. No, your morning, and then the management and the business, and then photo, most likely interviews, then some music that has to happen, and an appointment, and it's always like that, no stop. So to find the time, not only the half hour to keep your chops up, but to even dive into like a task, something like that, is just amazing. And he's a guy that probably a very few, not dismiss his talent, but would not think that is like one of those guys that will still dedicate that much time to studying his instrument and to really get to know the instrument, even more than what he already knows now, which is a fantastic amount of information.
Yeah. I mean, I read something about the late Eddie Van Halen, and somebody asked him, like, how did you start playing guitar, and how young, how old were you? And he was just a kid, and he said he used to take that guitar even to the toilet with him. He used to carry it everywhere. And that's how you learn your craft, really, isn't it?
Yes, but you know what? That kind of like it gets you the information that you need, I guess, to have the music conversation with other people and all of it. I mean, and all the practice, of course, help with your technique and all of it. But I think what really makes the difference is being able to play with other people. Because
well, Eddie Van Halen,
again, see, but that's something that, for example, you're seeing a lot in these days. When I mean these days, I'm talking about probably from the last decade, last 7-8 years. When you check out how many times somebody sends you a video or a link to a video where there is either like a little kid or a girl that maybe it's not older than 10 or 11, and they're playing guitar or bass or drums, and they are like monsters. Like, and where the hell? I mean, now more than ever, not that there were not people like that before, but before there were not that many outputs for artists like that, or even places where to go and find this information. Now with YouTube, I mean, you have everything from, again, the little girl that sounds like Steve Vai to the cat that does black flips while making a pizza. So it's you have all these informations, and I think a lot of young musicians kind of like taught themselves about playing by looking at other people that they were doing the same thing, at videos, and basically they became and they're still becoming, I would say, bedroom warriors, where they grab this guitar or this bass and you feel like, holy kid, that's so overwhelming. Well, I want to hear that with other people, because generally that's not the case. We used to always say something about Eddie Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen is Eddie Van Halen on the stage, not only when he's in his bedroom. There's a difference.
Yeah.
Because that's something that what breaks the barrier. Because again, you can play along as much as you want, and that, of course, it gives you more flexibility. It gets you to think faster about some stuff and all of it. But unless that's your goal, when you then start to interact with other people, it's just a totally different beast. It's almost you have to learn how to play again. Sure, you have those informations, but again, I mean, I'm not trying to be vulgar or anything like that. Think like when you're like 15 or 16 as a boy, and you're taking care of yourself, and all of a sudden you have a girlfriend, and you have these first few experiences. I mean, it's a disaster. Even though you probably mastered your own art of doing that, there's not really much communication with the other party at that point, because they were not experienced. I mean, then of course, along the way, everybody learns something, and you're able to communicate. That's the same thing with instruments. So, and that for me, I think it's the biggest disappointment that there is out there today with these media of communications, which are otherwise great on a lot of other aspects, is the fact that they've created a world that I like, the fact that you have an output to the world without having necessarily to go to the middleman and the label and all that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, kind of like it castigated, and castrated the old school approach, but the old school, which was like a rehearsal, going to play in a club, a play out live. I mean, we have people that won Grammys and they never done one shows in their life. I mean, how's that possible?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, that doesn't take anything away maybe from their songwriting skills or for their potential of as artists, or as potential and knowledge on their own instrument. But again, Elton John didn't become Elton John because somebody all of a sudden gave him $5 million and turned him around. Somebody gave him $5 million and turned him around because he was that good, to get the $5 million. You know what I mean? It's like when you get a Grammy or you get an Oscar, it's not that overnight automatically you are, as a director or as an actor or as a musician, or you're much better, and now your cachet or your guaranteed for live shows are 10 times higher than what they were like last year. No, I mean, you were that good that you got to that point, and that point is just the confirmation that you were that good. It's not a turning point with you. I mean, you were that already like a year, 2 years ago. So it's the same thing, and I think unfortunately, there's too many artists that are relying on this kind of communication and not the in-person kind of exchange to deliver the music, which I guess is fine. But I noticed that when then you hear the younger guys, and there is like a incredible resurgence of younger artists, musicians, from 12, 13, 14 up to the early 20s, that are so much into not only doing that, but kind of like getting like old school music, like redo even, sure, maybe we do it out of their own bedroom, but I had everybody in my band here doing it. Maybe we do an unplug, whatever it is, from Led Zeppelin to, the Doors and all of that. And you see the difference in these guys, the way they play versus the other guys that they never play with anybody else in their life, but they can play the Fly of the Bumblebee at twice the speed,
Yeah, well, that's, going back to the old days, really before YouTube and the internet, I mean, that's the only way you did learn, was you learned maybe a song off the radio, or you could see the guys on the TV, and then you get together with your mates and you'd all sit together and you would jam and practice, like you said, in your bedroom or whatever, and that is the old way of doing it. I mean, today, you're talking a lot about mimicry. I think you've got, you've got these like Japanese girls that are learning these incredible guitar songs, but they're learning them on a PlayStation, Well, they are.
No, absolutely. No, but you're right. It's but again, this is not. I'm not trying to be, the old geezer that is mad about the technology and all of that. Absolutely not. I have no problem with the technology. I do not have any problem with, actually, this is a great thing. Just to give you a vibe, it's not necessarily a detrimental thing. We with my bigger band, Supersonic Blues Machine, a couple of years ago, we headlined the Mahindra Blues Festival in India. And we had two guests with us, Billy F. Gibbons from ZZ Top, one of my dearest friends, actually the guy that motivated me to start the band, and Eric Gales. Two monsters of blues and blues rock. We get to India. There was obviously a bunch of other artists and a couple of, established blues artists, but they were like American. And then, the promoter says like, hey, do you mind if we have this guy here that, is a big fan. It's a very known blues guitar player here in India. I would like to, stay here during the sound check if you had, sure. Actually, we ended up inviting him on stage at the end of the night. He jammed with us and all of it. This guy's name was Warren Mendonça. Billy called him on stage, in the beginning when we were about to do the sound checks. It's like, who's this guy? Very curious. He says, hi, or whatever it is, And, oh yeah, I'm playing guitar and stuff like that. And Billy was putting his guitar on, and he went, took it, put it on, and then he actually put it off, and he says, here, why don't you play us something? And the guy, wow, without even blinking, he just grabbed the guitar and he started playing some like Muddy Water stuff. And little Jimmy Reed would actually happen to be Billy's favorite, blues artist when he was growing up, and like at the beginning of ZZ Top.
Yeah.
Billy was blown away, and this guy had like an incredible blues technique and stuff. And then he started to throw in some things that were typical of what we might think is like Indian music.
Okay.
And we were all blown away. But this guy was like then throughout the whole festival playing with all these like big blues singers and stuff like that. And it was like, it could sound like somebody coming from, the swamps of Louisiana. We're talking. This is like, what happened? Oh man, I've been, like I live in a little town outside Mumbai and everything. We didn't really have much stuff, so I always like watch all these videos and I always like the blues and blah 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 because of Rolling Stones and which was very popular here in India. So he said, I hear Keith Richard talking about these names, and I started to look, videos and everything, and I wanted to pick up that. So again, in this case, it was fantastic because this guy, you go into a country that it's not even rock and roll, it's just like a completely different culture and everything beside the English factors. I mean, it's just, culturally, especially musically, it's like a planet apart, it's just completely different, different world. And he educates himself in a way. Obviously, you could tell that he played with people, it's not just like him out of his bedroom, but he used the bedroom for, as I would say, training, the Rocky Balboa. Okay, I'm doing, I'm pulling the logs and, the sled and all of that. And then I'm going to fight Ivan Drago. Well, that's what he did. But in that case was incredibly educational, and it was beautiful because this is like, I mean, I really hope that, and I'm sure that there are plenty of people that, use technology in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very, that's actually what the technology should be used for. But then are the other guys that, again, they follow victim of the technology, not necessarily their fault, that's what I'm saying. And then, not to talk about the technology of today's delivery of music, like streaming services and all of that. Again, I do not have a problem with the streaming per se. It's not that I need to see the record. I mean, to me, CDs sound a little better than MP3s, but that's me. That doesn't matter. It's not that I have to see it to listen to it. However, I'm very disappointed because of all this media, the monetization that they apply to the actual music, basically it killed a generation of musicians, actually two generations of musicians. And that it's something that doesn't really sit well with me. But again, it's not because I'm coming from an era where I used to buy vinyls and cassettes and, and then CDs and all of that. I'm like old fashioned, or I wanted to, I was better then. Not really. There's a lot of things that are much better now. Trust me.
For sure. I know.
Look at this. I mean, it was impossible. When I moved to the States, I remember my first phone call to my parents was from a public phone that was in the hotel where I used to have this room. Those were hotels that you could rent like a room by the week and all of it. Like really, oh my God. I mean, if I think about it, it was just horrible. And they had those 3 phones underneath. And I remember that the first call that I made to my parents just to say, we're here, we're fine, blah, blah, blah. I'll let you know. I found an apartment when I'm moving in 2 weeks and blah, blah, blah. I'll call you again next week, but we're all okay. I was probably on the phone for about maybe 4 minutes or 5 minutes at the very max. it costed me $35 of 1990,
Yeah.
which is the equivalent of today of, that's about maybe like 105,
Yeah, maybe more.
$95 or something like that. So, and that for like a phone that didn't even sound that good. And now here we are, we're doing a video call at the same time from Los Angeles to the UK, and for free. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's
whatever
not
that
really
means.
for free. I had to pay for it, but
Well,
well, I'm David.
yeah, I know, but what I'm
I know
saying
what you
is
mean.
like,
Yeah,
I mean, of course, you have like a high quality camera service and all of that, and you probably have the pro account and everything. But what we're doing, if it's just matter of a call to say, hey, what's going on, to your parents or to your friends, just to check on each other,
Mm.
you can use it for free, of course, as
Yeah,
long
yeah,
as you
yeah,
pay
for
the
sure.
as
Yeah,
long as you pay the internet. So
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So going back, I mean, underneath all that, then underneath your production, and I mean, you obviously played bass. So going back to your real inspirations, and your real inspirations of blues, rock, and a bit of reggae, I think.
yeah, the well, that's I would say I'll redefine my affinity to reggae. My first music love, I mean, I started to listen to music very young because I liked it. My family was not a music family. My mom used to play the radio a lot during the day when she was doing her home chores and all of that. And back then, Italy was definitely not a rock and roll country. The music that they were playing was not even the Italian good stuff, because I'm a big fan of Italian music from the 50s, the 60s, and early 70s. And you can hear it today in a lot of movies and TVs, like that particular sound, very retro kind of vibe. And it's fantastic. I love that. There was not even that. They were already like in the phase of the super cheese Italian pop that I couldn't stand. But together with that, for some reason, they were not playing rock and roll, but they were playing a lot of rhythm and blues. They were playing soul, Earth, Wind and Fire, Tina Turner, James Brown, Sly and the Family Stone, all that kind of stuff. And that, I guess, was like already kind of like nurture my side into that. And that's why, by the way, I'm getting along very well with Glenn Hughes, because we share the same, Glenn, it's the same thing. I mean, his favorite singer is Stevie Wonder. So
Yeah.
there's and Donny Hathaway. So you know where we're going with this. And again, but the artist that I ended up in picking up like the records and I wanted to listen to because I like it was Bob Marley. There was something in that sound that really weren't the lyrics back then, because I couldn't understand a word of what he was singing. But there was a sound. There was something that kind of like made me understood. It made me understood what was going on there, even though I was a little kid. Then obviously I saw James Brown, the Italian TV. That was his first performance, and I was like shocked. And then came Carlos Santana and other people. And I started playing bass because when I came back to live with my father after a few years away, I was living with my aunt because my natural mom passed away. My friends from elementary school, they were already playing guitar, drums, keyboards, and all of that. And I didn't play anything. I wanted to play guitar, but I was starting when they were already, advanced. They had already 3 years on me. And even though I wanted to play guitar, I sucked. I mean, I sucked. Yeah, I sucked. But somebody suggested me to play bass, and I didn't even know what it was. Just, what's bass? And I said, oh, it's just like a guitar, but 4 strings instead of 6. Wow, sounds easier. Yeah, bring it on. So I ended up starting with that, and within a year, I was already playing with a lot of other bands around Milan, and I don't know, just something clicked in there, and obviously I always listened to records. There was never like a dull moment. There was always music playing in the background, and when I had the chance to obviously grab my instrument, I was always jamming along. Funny enough, if it wasn't for like a Earth, Wind and Fire or Stevie Wonder or that kind of stuff, I was jamming along to Iron Maiden and Black Sabbath and and Cream and all that kind of stuff. But I had to say that in those years, my early years as a bass player, I probably my biggest inspiration outside R&B and the blue stuff and all of that were actually two English artists. One was Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath has always been one of my favorite band, because actually it's a blues band if you think about it. And it was like a blues band coming from I'll say a very metropolitan proletarian kind of background, and obviously a distinct sound that could not be the same one from the Swamp of Alabama. But the nature, especially the first record, I mean, if you break it down and you play with the acoustic guitar and you get some like old dude that sounds like Elmer James singing it.
Yeah,
It's like, man, that's blues, man. It's not. There's nothing else. So I used to a lot to him, and the other one was Sade. I know that
oh,
it's like,
okay.
well, how the hell you going from like Iron Maiden to? Well, that was always been me. If there's something that I like, I listen to it and I don't care. But the thing is, like, I like to put on those records and jam along and play with it. The
Yeah,
funny thing is, like, I didn't know anything about music theory and all of it. It's just like I like to go around, and I love the sound of these instruments. There was, I don't know, it's just something click. And but I think in my past life, at some point, I was a drummer because I always think like a drummer. And I think always for me, a band is only as good as its drummer. I don't
yeah,
care who
yeah,
plays
yeah,
guitar. I don't play. I don't care who sings. I mean, yeah, in studio, yes, but live, a great drummer can change a shitty band, but a
yeah,
great band can be turned into shit by a shitty drummer big time.
yeah.
So and I guess the rhythm and that has always been my forte. I always played. It's not that I stopped. Once I got more into production, it's not that I quit. I play on a lot of records that I produce, and I play with a lot of other artists. So it's not that it was like a complete detachment for the performing side of it, but I kind of like put a halt to extended touring and all of that. But actually, it was in 2010 um, with Steve Lukather. I for some reason somebody contacted me as one of the people that we work with and everything, and they wanted to do some shows of like guitars, instrumental stuff in relation to like percussions and drums festivals and all that kind of things. And I was telling Steve, hey, they would love to have you. Maybe have things, if you're interested. It was like a very, very well organized thing. And Steve's like, you know what? You always give me these things. You always hook me up with this thing, and then we record and we play. We never really get to go out ourselves. Like on the road. Why don't you come on board this time? I won't actually. Let's put it this way: I won't do it if you don't do it. And I'm like, okay. It's not really. Not that we stay out 5 months, so it was like I don't know, 3 weeks, a month, something like that. And I told him, yeah, but I haven't, I told him, Steve, I have this thing, with drummers. So who do we get? And it's just like, and he's like, oh, I have plenty of drummers. I know I'm all. Well, who do you wanna get? And I said, well, beside all of our common friends, there is one guy that I never really had the opportunity to meet even, but or play or record with, but that I think it's like one of the best drummers I've ever played. And this is who's that? Kenny Aronoff. And he's like, are you kidding me? For Kenny's, oh my God, I've known for like 20 years, one of my best buddy. He introduced me to my ex-wife and all of it. And I thought, are you still talking to him? No,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
no. They were really cool. So he calls Kenny. We hook up. Actually, Kenny was like in the surrounding because we were having lunch. He shows up. We started talking. We got like very close, and we had a hell of a time. And that kind of like got me back the bug of playing. The good thing is like my daughter was already older. I kind of like put a halt, not only because of the production, but also because when my daughter was born, I didn't want her to go through the same experience that a lot of kids, of friends and colleagues of mine went through with disastrous marriages and all of that. And, you see them all at Christmas and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of like decided to, okay, I wanted to stick around. Obviously, I'm still going to be playing, but, I want to be doing more of this. My daughter was getting older. So, we did this, and everything was good in that sense. And Kenny and I, from that moment, started to kind of like thinking like, wow, maybe we should continue to do something like this. We should get somebody that sings and stuff. Because, by the way, in those days, Steve Lukather wanted to put an end to Toto, and to my loss, in one way, I ended up in convincing him I'm not. So basically, we came back to Los Angeles and we lost the guitar player. Because I talk him out of him. I says, look, dude, you cannot break Toto apart. You don't understand. This is like one of the best bands out there. The first time I got laid was one of your songs. You cannot do this, And so I'm just kidding, but there were like a little doubts because there was like a lot of some of the original guys in Toto. Back then was like Mike Porcaro was just. And Jeff Porcaro years earlier and all of that. So it's like, I'm the only one almost that is left from the original lineup. So there's no sense, but he was able to get it to work, and that was great. So we, Kenny and I, started to kind of like keep our ears and eyes open for a possible other two guys that would come in and could do this with us because we like to do that. And I started to hire Kenny for several of my production, and one of again, with Leslie West, where we ended up in backing all these monsters: Lash, Zach Wild, the same look at there, obviously Leslie, but also Joe Bonamassa, and we're like, wow, this like we develop our own Jergo as a rhythm section, right?
Mhm.
And when and Billy Gibbons too, actually, because Billy was it was one of the guys involved. And like 4 years after that, 4 or 5 years after that, Billy calls me because he wanted to write a song for a commercial. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but that's at the end of the day, he comes to the studio. At the end of the day, his manager calls us that the commercials director, was able to clear a song that he originally wanted to have as part of the commercial. So it's just like, we're not going to need the song that you guys work on it, but feel bad that you put in all the time and you wrote it, you worked on it. So the label and managements and all of that, I'm going to give you a free pass. You guys do whatever you want with the song, including with Billy's participation and his name and all of that. So I'm asking Billy, hey, I think this sounds really cool. I mean, it's not that we invented anything special. I mean, it's kind of like the discovery of hot water, but it sounds really cool. It's what do you think? And he's like, well, you got one, write 9 more songs and start a band. And then when I can get away from my daily job and come and play too. And I'm like,
Brilliant.
wow. And he says like, but you need a good drummer to do that. But I got the drummer. So I called Ken immediately and I sent, but hey, can I send you something? And say, yeah. But okay, cool. So I'm gonna send him in the MP3 of what we put together that day. Basically we played everything to a drum machine that I programmed. Like 5 minutes afterwards, Kenny calls me back. She's like, man, what is this and everything? But well, it's something I just worked on it with Gibbons and everything. And check this out. Billy told me that actually we should write more songs like this and start a band. And he wants to play in it and everything. And he's like, what are you going to do with the song? But well, we actually wanted to use it for this thing with the band. It would be song number one. And it's just like, are you guys going somewhere? But we're going to have dinner. And then Billy's going home and I'm staying in the studio. No, just stay around. He showed up with his track with the drums in it. We record, drums the same night. And basically that was the first song for Supersonic Blues Machine. And 2 weeks afterwards, I'm going to see, Warren Haynes, that was coming to town to play with Government Mule. And Warren and I were doing a record together. I mean, actually, we're co-producing at distance a posthumous record on Tommy Bolin, where we had a bunch of friends of ours interacting with the original B or C take of some of Tommy's original records. That was actually a great record. I'm really, really enjoying that experience. Anyways, I'm getting on the tour bus and Warren is asking, hey, I talked to Gibbons and stuff. When why don't you tell me anything? I want to do some jamming and stuff. So what are you talking about? What Gibbons? What did he tell you? It says that you guys started a band. You started a band, but with Gibbons. But why not? I said obviously that he wants to come around and he wants to help and blah blah blah. And then you guys record some stuff, and he told me that I should think about it and all that. But Gibbons tell you that, and he's like, yeah. But well, now that you mention it, there is a song that I'm preparing with my main co-writer that actually now happened to be our second guitar player, and backup vocalist in Supersonic. And I sent him this demo, and Warren really liked it. So we went back and forth and stuff, and then we ended up doing a recording actually with Skype back then, video, where he was at the studio in New York at the Carriage House, and Kenny and I were at my studio here in Los Angeles. So basically, we're not in the same studio, but it was not one of those things like where I send you the track. No, kind of like we knew. I mean, we had the audio connected to the laptops and stuff. So we were there, and it started from that. And from that moment on, to be honest with you, it's been incredibly difficult to put down bass, and actually got me to reevaluate of a lot of other things, and it got me busy. That's why I ended up also now with this new project of mine, my solo band, Soul Garage Experience. It's just because now I cannot play enough. It's not that I'm abandoning productions or anything. That I love to do that more than anything, and it's great. But nowadays it's a different thing. it's no more like in the old days. There's a lot of things that are different, and you need to be able to do a bunch of different things. And to be honest with you, I noticed then when I play the most, or at least I keep like a consistent schedule of practicing or performing or doing something with my instrument, I'm in a better mood. I'm more balanced, and I don't know. I guess then it helps all the way, all the way around. So there you go. Especially there's not. To be honest with you, there's nothing else that, when you perform on stage and you have all these people, it's and not because it needs to be a big place. It could be like a club and you just have as much as a good time. However, I remember that when we released the first Supersonic Blues Machine, the second we and it's crazy, but that's thanks to our wonderful agent, our European agent, and actually we're there in London, Neil O'Brien, and he's a force of nature, and he got us our first show almost as a co-headliner in Holland, the Grollo Blues Festival. And funny because we got there and we were playing right before Derek Trucks and Bonnie Tyler. They were like the headliner. We were like small third, whatever. But in our band, to our I would say pride, we had Robin Ford and Billy Gibbons and also Walter Trout. We were all jamming together, so it was a big deal. And I kind of like didn't really realize it because it was the first shows that we were doing with Supersonic in that kind of vibe. Because obviously, our singer of back then, Lance, Kenny, and I played way before here in town when we were recording and all of that. But that was like with all the sidemans, keyboards and vocals and all these other guests, was the first time. But the second time, we were headlining at the Northern Blues Festival, and well, obviously Billy was with us again, Robin Ford, and this time I was able to get Steve Lukather to come with us because we wanted to really celebrate it. And that was our second show. Our record was out for 4 months. We never really thought about much in terms of we're able to do this. It's fantastic. It's great. But I remember there was during the second song that we were playing, the second song on the set, actually the third song on the set, which is a song that it's on our first record, and it's called I Ain't Falling Again. It's one of my favorite pieces. I wrote that song. It's about a very trippy story. It's a very, I'm say occult, but in a good way, with a good ending. And it's a very positive, all stuff from Supersonic and especially with Soul Garage Experience are always very, very peace, love, and understanding, very, direct, even though with Soul Garage, I'm getting a little bit more political. I'm kind of I'm pulling a Tom Morello on everybody. But with Supersonic, we're very Bob Marley, we're very John Lennon, we're very that kind of, very passy, peace, love, and all that kind of stuff, right? Well, there is a big intro on that song where there's only the kick playing and the singer sings, the first verse. There is no other instruments and stuff. And I think there were about 8,000 people or 9,000 people at that festival. That was our second concert. I mean, only thinking about it, it just gives me chills. I mean, you had I'm not saying everybody, but for sure there were a lot. They were singing along to the singer. And funny enough, we haven't played live that much. So Lance had to add one of those iPads and stuff with the lyrics on the microphone because that's the kind of stuff that you learn the more you play them, right? So the singer in the band was not 100% sure of the lyrics, but several thousand of those mofos over there, they were singing along, and it's just dude, that's my song. I wrote these words. It's just it's a trip. It's something that it's unreal. And actually was one of those things. It was one of those feelings like the one that I had when I decided to become a musician. And it's those, I would say, epiphany kind of moments. I mean, the first time that it happened to me was Castle Donington in 1983, and I was a little kid. I was in the UK during the summer to staying with the family to practice English and all of that. It was a very common thing to do back then. I don't know if they still do that.
Yeah, there's school exchange or whatever.
Kind of And then in Milan, I had older friends than mine. I always hung with older people, and they were coming to the UK to watch this concert. So I decided to go along, and funny because it was all a cycle, because that night was the first big festival debuts of ZZ Top.
Yeah.
Whitesnake were playing. That was the first show that Ronnie James Dio did with his own band, Dio. Uh, Diamond Head were playing, Meatloaf. I mean, it was like an insane. I mean, it's like a concert that's like part of like one of those like really legendary concerts. Back then, it was just a concert for us. And beside everything that I learned, that I see, and they got repeated throughout my life that day, uh, that night, it was a fight of everything that was getting thrown out in the air. I mean, it was disgusting. It was like about 110,000 people, 100,000 people, whatever it is. And it was this big, loud, a major mess. And plus, it rained the night before. It was mud all over the place. And everything looked like a fight. But as soon as David Coverdale started to talk about, I don't remember what, because again, my English back then was, I was learning and whatever. He ended up in talking about this, what he liked about music and the message about that song. And Benny Marsden was playing this riff, and the song was "Ain't No Love for the Heart of the City." And the way, as soon as that thing started, the crowd changed. Everything, everyone shut the hell up. And who had him, bringing up lighters and just starting, the whole thing. It was like insane. It was an ocean of people doing that. Then obviously they played the song and stuff, but what really shocked me was the effect and the instant communication and connection that there was between the band and the people on that particular song. That, to be honest with you, I mean, people were enthusiastic about what they heard up to that moment, but I didn't experience that level of electricity, the level of, I don't know, it was just like surreal. And that was insane. That was insane. And that really, that kind of like showed me for the first time the true power of music. And a few months later, thanks to my brother and some of his friends that work for the city and all of that, I had the opportunity to go see the first, I think probably only, performance in my city of Queen.
Okay.
Well, obviously with Freddie Mercury back then. And there again, the way this guy was handling the crowd, it was just and back then, again, in Italy, it was not, like today, everywhere you go, you find somebody that respond to you in English if you ask a question. Back then, not really. Not even people that claim to be able to speak English spoken properly, And so with Freddie, that was actually talking and all of that, and just finding his way to come up with the most, insane Italian sentences. And he was incredibly gracious. But again, the power of music that, when it was him alone with what's his name, with Brian May, All of My Love, All of My Life, I'm sorry. Love of My Life, I'm sorry. And then when everybody left for the intro of Bohemian Rhapsody and all of it, and just the electricity in the air, and ended up in going backstage with my brother, because we wanted to say bye to our friends that worked in the buildings and all of that. And we didn't know. I mean, it was, not like now that I know what happens backstage. I didn't even know what a backstage was. Actually, the guys in the band are there with journalists and all of that and stuff. And I'm getting this like super euphoric sense and all of it, but I'm not talking with anybody because I'm shy and I don't, I don't know. It's just like nothing. I was already impressed about everything that was going on. And then when it's time to leave, I'm leaving. And all of a sudden I'm realizing back, at my back, actually Freddie Mercury was right there. And he was talking to people. I didn't even notice that. But actually I was feeling this guy's energy. There was like something surreal. And after that night, when I was driving back home with my brother, I told him, that's what I want to do in life. I want to be a musician, because that was, something that it was insane. And again, on that stage in Nutolen, when you hear these people just going absolutely crazy over something that you did, it just, there's nothing better than that. So obviously I cannot do that from a recording studio. I can do a bunch of other stuff that I know are inspiring and make people feel good, but the performing, it's just something that I guess once you have it, you're an addict. You cannot, I mean, it's like, when you're a smoker, or you're, like that, you're always a smoker. You just learn how to deal with it and stay the hell out of it, but when that thing or the part, it's like, you understand what I'm saying. It's just it's something that you cannot, it just becomes part of you. So now,
Yeah,
obviously, and obviously there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing illegal about it. So just trying to do it as much as I can now.
yeah. So is that why you've stepped up now to become the front man for your own band,
Yeah,
or
it's
Fab
actually,
Soul Garage?
yeah. So Garage Experience is the name of the band that it's the band in my solo record. But it's also the name of my studio and this whole thing that we're putting together that started during the pandemic. And the thing of the frontman, to be honest with you, it didn't start like that. I always thought that I always wanted to do a record
Mhm.
on my own on the stuff, without having to keep into consideration other people. Because don't get me wrong, I produced and I write most of the stuff for Supersonic, and I'm incredibly happy. That's my band, that's my baby, and my first priority. But again, Chris Barris is there and Kenny Aronoff for the other guys. So we're doing what we're doing. Even if it's a song that comes from me, I gotta have the idea, but I know very well what those guys do, where they like to go. And even if we want to challenge each other, there is a sound and there is something. You need to be respectful of the other people that you're playing with. There is a lot of stuff that was already aside as far as music and some other things that I was working on it. That was more my sound more than Supersonic. It was already way too funky, way too soul, way too I don't know, way too black compared to what we do, the kind of blues rock that we do with Supersonic. And it's always been what I like, what I liked. And I already was jamming around town with Stephen Perkins and with some of the other cats involved. And I said, okay, let's do this. And for some reason, once again, Billy Gibbons and my wife. My wife is one of the backup vocalists of Supersonic Blues Machine, but also she sings with on Soul Garage Experience. She's a hell of a singer, studio coach, vocal coach, and she toured and recorded with everyone. I mean, if you think my resume is impressive, I mean, you should read hers. Mine is like a pea, like a pea, like the vegetable compared to
Yeah.
hers. So I'm preparing these demos like I always do for Supersonic, and I'm just finalizing everything, and it's me singing on it. And probably because I always prepare demos singing, uh, knowing that then the real singer is gonna come in and do it. I don't really pay much attention in it. I don't really start. Let me redo this and all of that. But no, it's always very, very raw, very in your face. But my wife says like, but it sounds good. Why don't you keep it like that? Why don't you sing it? I'm like, no, come on, I'm not saying. Well, but as if it sounds good, what's the problem? Because I never really saw myself, and I have a vocal cord condition that I've been diagnosed to when I was 17. So I never pursued that. I never. I mean, just with Supersonic, I started to do backing vocals, and again, I started to sing some leads and stuff like that on the demos for the songs that we were going to. Never, you're never going to see me in front of playing and with microphone on stage and all that. Never really thought about it like that. But again, I'm sitting. We're driving with Billy to a place. We're meeting somebody else, and I was showing some of the song that I was working on. I thought, well, can you please tell me what you think about the song and everything like that? And he was like, I love it. It's a great sound and all of it. It's just like, who's singing? No, that's what's gonna go. That's what's gonna change. I'm talking to a couple of different singers. But that was you? Yes. Keep it. What you mean keep it? It was like, keep it. It's fine like this. Don't change it. It's not broken. Don't fix it. And I'm like, okay. And since Billy is the one that gave me already the thing with Supersonic, and he was right, and he's the one that got me to change on a bunch of stuff. Like I said, when I first met Billy after 2 days of recordings, that was like 16 or 17 years ago. He's asking me, Fabrizio, that's like Italian, right? Said, yes. But were you born in Italy? Said, yes. Oh, interesting. This is like, and why? But I mean, when did you came here? I said, well, when I was 20, 21. If I saw you speak Italian, I said, of course. I said, why? I hear this like New York accent, or what's going on with that? I said, well, that's where, when I moved and the band, and that's how I kind of like learn how to speak English, it was like with the guys in the band and all of that. And, some of the families and some other people around, and, that's the way they talk in New York and all of it. And I've always been very cautious about me trying to sound proper, not to, to sound like those characters in the movie. Yeah, hello, like this and pizza, and whatever,
Good fellas.
And so Billy says like, why blend in when you can stick out? For how many Fabrizio do you know in this town that do what you do? She's like, you don't need to explain anybody to nothing. I mean, you were born in Italy. Good for you. They didn't. So actually, you speak two languages. They couldn't be giving you shit for that. I never really saw it that way. And so when Billy tells you these kind of things, you need to pay attention because generally he's coming up with something that could be a book, part of a book, right?
Mhm.
And so I said, you know what? I'll give it a try. And I released the single. I say, okay, I want to do a record and I have all the songs and I have the guys that can sing it because I wanted to put together these things where like those bands like Kiss where everybody sang or like, Electric Light Orchestra, I was Lion the Family Stone, even Toto, where Queen, the Beatles. I mean, it doesn't matter, like a situation like that. I was not trying to build again like a band where I have the singer, the stuff like that, because I wanted to be able to get to say yes to way more engagements and offers that sometimes we receive that we cannot fulfill with Supersonic, because with Supersonic it's a little bit more of a logistic challenge when we put together shows. And so I knew that I was gonna this time finish the solo record, but I never thought in terms of like the singing and blah 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 and blah blah blah. We did this song, did the video, put out, and she's okay. Let's see what happens. And all of a sudden, everybody's just like, "Oh, it sounds so great! Sounds so great!" I remember my friends that uh, never would have guessed for a second, and they don't waste any second to make fun of something that if they think it's funny. Everybody was telling me it's great, but not because the singing. It's just it's as you if you heard our song is there's nothing challenging or vocally challenging or anything like that. I mean, there's a couple of proper singer in the band, and when they sing, you hear the difference. But I guess these are my songs, my message, and I guess kind of like the way I guess it's more the feeling and the vibe that it is, and this is
Yeah, yeah.
it's closer to like, in one way, Bob Marley or Bob Dylan. It's not like I'm not trying to find any 5 octaves, range or super chops, Al Jarreau meets, Ray Charles. Absolutely not. It's just like you get in front of the mic and that's the song you sing it. And I think it's very, it's still part of my bringing, and that's we're going close to we're going back to what was your first questions about the influences and the reggae. And even though my first again music love was Bob Marley, back then when I was playing music, when I started playing music in my 15, 16, 17, majority of the music that we were getting in Italy that was not, the Italian pop and all of that was like British music, from new wave to metal to, the classic, AC/DC, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin and Stones and Pink Floyd and all of that. And you had all these new wave sounds and stuff. That was the time, right? Um, but there was one band specifically that was not new wave, that for some reason I was attached to it, and that's where The Clash.
Okay, yeah.
I loved their vibe. That this is, but it's a punk band. No, I'm sorry. And with all the due respect, I never been a fan of punk. I get the complaint, I get the rage, I get the message, and I even share the message. But musically wise, I'm sorry. To me, something like Sex Pistols and never really did anything to me musically. I'm not dismissing them, okay? Because I mean that might represent a lot for other people, but to me, it never really did anything. And all of a sudden you're getting this band with these kind of songs, and my cousin gave me the copy of Sandinista, and I'm like, I mean, standing up with, I don't know, I probably heard the Magnificent Seven, I don't know, 25,000 times. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
And the relevance of reggae music, especially in the UK in the late 70s and in the 80s, it's actually it's paramount, because it's part of a cultural element beside the Jamaican and other immigration form. It was embraced by the industrial cities, and then industrial cities have their own sound and beat. The working class got their own
Yeah, yeah.
series of heroes and narratives. And I guess even though the origin is the same, I would say I'm closer to the reggae that was delivered, by the Clash,
Yeah.
when they were going there, more than what Bob was doing, because Bob was OG. It's like it's a real thing. And I think only somebody with his background, I mean, I'm not saying only just because he's black. I'm just saying that grew up in that environment, with that culture, with those experience, it could deliver that sound in almost a
yeah,
religious, in a religious way, because Bob Marley's concerts were a religious experience. It was just a different thing. What I use this element, it's more like it's a rhythm that I really like, because for some reason I feel at home with it, but it's not that I grow up, cleaning up molasses trees and smoking
yeah,
joints,
yeah,
on the
yeah,
beach of Jamaica. It wasn't that, and funny, because our agent, again, the one and only Neil O'Brien, was telling me as soon as he heard not only the first single right down below, but the rest of the record, and it tells me, Fab, there is some songs in there. It's fantastic. It sounds like Dr. John's playing the Clash songs, and I'm like, or the other way around. And I never really made that connection up to most recently when he told me that. And then I realized how much influence all those bands had, when I was listening to it on the radio, or the records and all of it. And even though I was thinking that I was a rock guy, and I had my MC, and and I was all just all these things coming around, where I guess kind of like modifying my DNA on the
yeah,
spot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, are you still there? I thought I'd lost you then. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I listened to some of your songs on the internet today, and yeah, definitely picked up that vibe.
And also, I think the reggae influence on the songs. I mean, again, throughout the whole record, maybe you feel this like 2 or 3 times, whatever, but is because of actual the message of the record itself. Like I was saying, it's a very political record, but it's also a very positive record. And the message, it's once again, it's very close to the one that the Clash used to deliver, and the same
Yeah,
with Bob
yeah,
Marley and all of it. And sometimes, I guess reggae, it's kind of, I don't know, it's like a soothing pulse. I mean, it's a rhythm, it's a type of a beat, but even if you listen to Marley, uh, and I'm not talking about the woman, no woman, no cry, and all of that. I'm talking about Buffalo Soldiers,
yeah,
or
yeah,
Get Up and Stand Up, and that kind of stuff. Which, I mean, the words are like, wow, yeah, I
yeah,
hear
yeah,
you, I feel you, brother, big time. But it was always delivered with this like loving, it's like you almost learn how to assimilate the message instead of getting smacked right in your face. Because the same song, I mean, think like a Get Up, Stand Up, played by Rage Against the Machine. They could easily play that song because it fit. It fit what Bob was saying and what they're saying, and the energy and all that. Just but think that song played by Rage Against the Machine, it would be one of those things where you're going like, oh,
yeah,
just
yeah,
please turn it down. Sometimes full aggression might not necessarily be the best way to deliver that kind of message,
yeah,
especially if
yeah,
you're not trying to start an insurrection.
yeah,
And I think that mood suits me a lot. And I don't know. I just, like I said, this is my solo record. I didn't have to ask permission or
yeah,
please anybody else. And it's just like,
yeah,
at the end of the day, they're all blues songs because they all like based, blues based music. Um, let's see what happens if we play it this way, and I think it worked. I mean, at least I'm happy about it. So far, I haven't received any complaints, so I guess it's, stumble into something right.
yeah, yeah. But going back to Marley for a minute, I mean, Marley really invented his own style of reggae, didn't he? I mean, there wasn't anything like it, and I don't think there's
Yeah.
been anything like it since, to be honest.
No, even all the people that came around him, and the other guys like Peter Tosh and stuff like that, they were. I think they were probably more reggae than Bob Marley. Bob had this had the Rasta element added,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
religious and the spiritual element added to his music that made the music very esoteric. I mean, I know it might sound difficult to grasp that, but if you think about it, I mean, people think like Jamaica, people smoke a lot of doobies and all that, and they do. However, there is no type of reggae that sounds as dopey as Bob's version of reggae. Feel
yeah,
like even Peter Tosh, even the Wailers after Marley, um, All of a sudden they were getting edgier, they're a little bit rough, they're a little bit more pushier and stuff. Bob was always like, cool, man,
Yeah,
chill. Even
laid
when he
back.
was giving, there was like this, like, again, it sounds like, what you're smoking right now. It just, that's the right soundtrack. There was like this wave was like always,
Yeah.
it's never like, it was always like, it's like vibrations, and I don't know what was the secret, because again, if you hear the band without Bob, all of a sudden they sound rough. I
Yeah,
think it
yeah.
was him. I think it was energy. It was his presence that turned into, it was able, with the love message, to kind of like keep everything glued together and kind of like give it this incredible
Vibe.
coating. I don't, I don't,
Yeah,
I don't,
yeah.
I don't even know. I don't even know how to describe it. But for sure, I haven't heard anything close to Marley
No.
ever since.
Mm.
No, impossible.
No, 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 I don't think you will either. I mean, he's one of them, he's probably one of them special people, some of
Absolutely.
them people that you describe, like, you see the old black and white picture of Clapton as a god sprayed on the wall, and
Uh-huh.
it's the same sort of thing for Marley, probably.
Oh, absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
yeah,
Well, and again, like I said, there's a difference, and that's why I embrace this kind of songwriting, even with Supersonic Blues Machine, where it's not really reggae elements. I mean, maybe on California Soul there is a couple of rhythm that the guitar plays that might be confused for that, but I call it white reggae, in that
mm,
sense. Um, Here, even more is the actual embrace of the message itself, meaning with all the bad things that I'm saying and all the problems that we're talking about and all these other things that I'm trying, all these skeletons that I'm pulling out of somebody's closets or our closets as a society, I'm always saying it in a way where, um, look, but there is a solution. It's like, it's not necessarily bad. I mean, it might be, it's bad because it's sad and it needs to be fixed, but can fix it. It's not
yeah,
like, oh my God, we're doomed, or oh, screw you, or I'm gonna blow up the whatever it is because you guys are not doing. No, no, none of that. And I think that helped a lot in keeping the whole record and the whole approach of the music that we do in a good way. I mean, if you get to hear the band live, obviously is a blues, funk, rock and soul band.
yeah.
However, every single time before we're playing, I always tell the guys, just please, we don't do anything, don't play anything different. Just think for a second that, that we had Marley on stage with us tonight. Would you do
Okay.
what you're about to do? Even on our song? Okay, that's the only thing. It's just kind of like, it's a thermometer there that maintains things within, in focus and with the right prospect on that sense. But you know what? That kind of again, I'm being extra generous with Marley because again, it was also my first love and everything. But if you listen to a lot of um, performers from the late 60s, early 70s on the music that it's very close to, well, I mean, at least is a big influence on the soul garage experience music. I'm talking, Al Green and Marvin Gaye and
Yeah.
Curtis Mayfield, especially, like Al Green. There is that element of like, I don't know to explain it. It's like, yeah, it's pushed, it's filled, but it's this the cool element. It's very difficult to quantify it without playing something. But like for example, if you listen to the "I Want to Hold Your Hands" version, that song by the Beatles,
Hmm.
which is great, but that was like the early Beatles, the almost like the boys band. No, with all the due
Yeah, the
respect,
boy band.
okay?
Yeah,
Yeah, the clean cut Beatles,
yeah, yeah.
and if you listen to Al Green's version, they're not necessarily playing heavier than the Beatles. Actually, they're not. Um, but there is this. It's the with the drumming. I mean, it's played, but for some reason, um, it's not offensive. In other words, it's very overcoated by these. I don't know, these like love feelings or good vibe, whatever. And that's I think is like these performers had in common with Marley. Marley obviously he had it with his own sound, his his Jamaican roots and all of it. But all those dudes, for some reason, were able to kind of like command their sound in this super smooth way.
Yeah,
I really do not know how to describe it. But if you listen to those records, that's I think is the most the clear thing, the most common element that you don't know what it is, but it's cool.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, well, he was a reverend, so
Yeah,
he
but then
maybe
again,
had a bit of a gospel background as well.
yeah, but you know what? It's not necessarily that, because I always try to get some people around me that come from church background and all of that,
Yeah,
and they have incredible talents and stuff. But actually, they're in their delivery and they're pushing. They even have almost like a rockier attitude than a lot of rock guys that I know. They always like, because gospel comes from, it's the music of the soul, and when you are for real and you not do this because this is what calls for into this particular celebration or during this holiday, you're really involved. That's like, it's crazy. I mean, people
yeah,
just
yeah,
lose their shit. I mean,
yeah,
they're going like really nuts of it. And so it's like, think like Jimi Hendrix singing, like it could be something like that. So it's not something that is like, like a charmer. I don't know to explain it. I mean, the chops and the style, the notes might be there, but again, the delivery is completely different. If you
yeah,
listen
yeah,
to, you know, Al Green versus Kirk Franklin, Al Green has got even these like, yeah, it's the way he pushes and all the way he gets into stuff. It's like it could be an incredible rock singer, but he always does it in a way that is wow. It's just like
yeah,
it's almost intimidating. While then you Kirk Franklin with his big voice and fucking five ranges and hits the high, and all of it. And that's actually the very close attitude of soul. So I'm definitely the soul school is there because of the music chords, the progressions, and all of it. But in terms of delivery, I think these guys that we're talking about, they had something very particular. They have a connection. A lot of other musicians they have it. You don't have to be a singer, and you're able to deliver your sound, and it becomes immediately part of the context that you are delivering your song or your instruments part in that moment. I mean, I know myself several guys like that. But again, has
yeah.
been one of them. As soon as he gets on stage, something transcendent happens. And it's like, oh,
Yeah, I
Eric
mean,
Gales.
if
Eric Gales.
you watch him play guitar, it doesn't even look like he's playing guitar.
Oh,
He's
he's
got a
not.
very I don't know if you would call it a lazy style, but if you watch him, it's like I don't even believe he's playing that.
Well, you know
To
what?
be honest.
And actually, it's that's the other cool factor. Billy plays very very thin strings, like 0-7, and he's the only one that I know that can play 0-7 and never sound that is this big. But all the guitar players that we know, at least from kind of like they approach guitars like Billy, like Leslie West or even Steve Vai, they have a huge sound. They use very very thin strings, so it's like a myth that if you are a blues player or whatever it is, you need to be like Stevie Ray Vaughan and play 0-13. I mean, Billy told me that during one of their first ZZ Top tours, they were opening up for Baby King, and he gets to know Baby, and one evening, it goes on the tour bus, and Baby was there, and they were talking, and Lucille was there right on one of those on the booth, like next to Baby, and Billy was like, "Hey, can I ask you something? Do you mind if Oh yeah, sure, son." And Billy picks it up, and he was like, "Holy cow!" It's like very, very, very thin strings, very low action. And back then, he said, back then I was the Texas guy, so
Yeah,
power
yeah,
chords,
yeah,
like really high and all of it. And and I and Billy said, and I told Billy, wow, this is incredible, very comfortable to play and all of that. This is like not like mine. And Billy's like, why? What's going on with your guitar? Well, I'm playing bigger strings and all of that. And Billy asked him, show me your guitar. So Billy had to go and get guitar, brought back the other thing, and Billy picks it up, plays one chord, and says like, hell, son, what do you want to work so hard? Says, here, try this. And he gives him a set of these strings. And Billy said that he went back to their part of, where the
yeah, yeah,
trailer
yeah.
was and all of it. And he changed strings and he started to do that. And from that moment on, he started playing with very low action. And again, the control, the style. Billy has an incredible control of his instrument.
Yeah.
And he actually, got me back to that, because originally you always use very, very small strings on bass too. Then for some reason I got switched into big strings and all of that. And we're having this conversation with Billy, and I went back and I used the strings that I used earlier, which is still what I'm using now, and I'm much a happier person, because it's the connection that you can develop with the instrument. But when you play those kind of instruments set up like that, only you can play them. Like only Billy can play his guitar. Any other guitar players that is used in a different way, it picks it up and it the noise, or fretting noise and all of that. Same thing with my bass. But then Billy plays it and it sounds like Billy. So he has a full control over his instrument. I mean, don't get me wrong, he can play other instruments too, but with the guitar, his settings and stuff, it's part of his personality. And that thing of being laid back and everything, well, that's him as a person. I've never seen Gibbons pissed off once, never. And even when he is, is the kind of guy that says, well, maybe it's time to leave. And he, and he goes away. It doesn't, I don't know, he's got that, coolness. And he's a Southern gentleman. He's not just somebody from Texas. He's got a different thing. And I guess the laid back playing, it's black school, especially for drummers. And it's one of the key elements of the real blues players. And, everybody, from Clapton to Ronnie Wood and Keith Richards, they like to call Billy, the last king of Delta. There is a reason why they say that, right?
Yeah. Oh, they're amazing. I mean, we've had some good stories off you, to be honest. We were here to talk about your album, but I think we've covered almost everything.
All this, my album is because of all this. So if you listen to the album, you hear where I'm coming from. And that's what's very, very important. Again, it's a solo album. It's a very introspective record. There is all the music that I like, but all the music that I like comes not only for what I listening to while I was growing up, but is what I learned by playing with these people and what I'm experiencing every single time that I'm working with these people. So it's all part of it. And I'm pretty sure that now whoever listens to this and gets to hear the song, and they will understand what I'm talking about. And by the way, if I can, then I'll do a little pitch. The record, Fabrizio Grossi and Soul Garage Experience, is going to be released worldwide on September 10th. And it's all platform where you can get it, Amazon and all of that, but it will be available, for downloads and all of it. And if you want to keep yourself updated to what's going on, tour dates and videos and all of it, please go to either FabrizioGrossi.com or SoulGarageExperience.com. And that's the hub to get to our YouTube channel, to get to Spotify, to get to Facebook, Instagram, and all of that. Please like, follow, leave comments, and if you don't like it, please say so, inviting all that. I just want to hear from the public. And if you do that, you basically, you're keeping up with us and see what's going on. And again, we have the record coming out. There's going to be another single coming out called With or Without You, and the wonderful Betty Smith sings it. And I couldn't be more happy than that, because I always wanted to have her sing one of these songs. And currently there is another single out called Ain't No Giving Up. It's another one of those songs that we were talking about with a reggae feel and very Bob Marley. Song is really, the lyrics are very pungent, but sounds happy. So I guess it's easy to digest. So once again, soulgarageexperience.com, FabrizioGrossi.com. Just follow all the other links and you'll be taken into our realm of music.
Well, we'll share all the socials as well, so that's no problem then. All right, thanks, man. It's been nice. I would say it's been nice talking to you, but we've just spent an hour and a half listening to you, really. So but it's been great. We've had some great stories, some great insight about who you are, and hope you come back and talk to us again one day when you've got something new to promote. And cool, man.
Well, we're definitely gonna see you on your side of the ocean next year.
Let's hope so.
Absolutely. Guaranteed. I'll guarantee. Unless this time Godzilla comes up or something like that. Because you
never know. The Chinese have had this shot, and now it's the turn of the Japanese.
Well, anyway, space monkeys. I don't know. Whatever. Cool. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Cheers, Fab.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thanks.
Bye.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. So some cool stories there, Dave, from Fabrizio.
Let me just open the door a minute, because
hang on, I haven't stopped yet.
The puppy's going crazy. That's all right. Yeah. He knows an awful lot of people, doesn't he? So
yeah.
And he's got to work with lots of different people and produce them, and some really good stories there. You can hear the passion in him as well. I do wonder whether my old man's heard of him, to be honest, with the blues element. I'll have to have a chat with him.
Yeah, okay. Well, I did have a story, but I'm going to leave it now.
Okay.
Because this has been going on for an hour and a half, so it was a bit of a long one today.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been pretty good so far, trying to keep them to about an hour. So this one just dragged up. Well, I can't say it dragged on, but it just went on a little bit longer than normal. So.
All right.
But yeah, nice stories, nice guy, and I'm sure we'll speak to him again.
Okay.
All right, thanks, mate. I'll speak to you soon.
Ciao.